Fleet Commander Zexithara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the stars shift as 200 ships moved through space. The Zanari Dominion fleet stretched out before her like a silver river of metal and light. Each ship gleamed with perfect curves and smooth lines that caught the starlight. They moved together in perfect formation, their engines humming with the quiet power of advanced fusion technology. Zexithara felt pride swell in her chest as she looked at her fleet. The Zanari had built the most beautiful ships in the galaxy. Every curve served a purpose. Every line was perfect. Their vessels could travel between stars faster than any other species they had met. They could carry thousands of beings in comfort. They could mine asteroids, build colonies, and explore new worlds with ease. Most importantly, they had never lost a battle. "Commander," said her second-in-command, Officer Velkara. The younger Zanari approached with a data pad in her four-fingered hands. "We are now 3 days from the target system. The humans call it Sol." Zexithara nodded and took the data pad. She had read these reports many times, but she enjoyed reading them again. Each page made her more confident about their mission. The humans were such a simple species. They still used chemical rockets to leave their planet. Their ships were made of basic metals welded together. They burned fossil fuels and split atoms for power like primitives. "Look at this," Zexithara said, pointing at an image on the data pad. It showed a human space station orbiting their world. They built this from pieces. They flew each piece up separately and stuck them together with tools. "Can you imagine? We grow our stations in orbital factories." Velkara made a clicking sound that meant amusement in their language. "The intelligence reports say they still fight wars on their own planet, with physical weapons that shoot metal pieces." "Barbaric," Zexithara agreed. She scrolled through more images. Human spacecraft looked like metal boxes with engines attached. Some had solar panels sticking out like flat wings. Others had spinning sections to make fake gravity. Everything looked crude and simple compared to Zanari technology. The Zanari had been watching human radio and television signals for 50 years. They had learned the human languages. They knew about human culture and history. What they saw made them feel sorry for such a backward species. Humans fought constantly. They polluted their own world. They built ugly cities and filled them with noise and smoke. But Earth had something the Zanari needed. The planet was rich in rare minerals. It had perfect gravity and atmosphere for Zanari colonies. Most importantly, it had huge amounts of water. The Dominion needed water for their growing empire. Earth had more water than any planet they had ever found. "The conquest should take less than 1 day," Zexithara told her crew. "We will demand their surrender. When they see our superior technology, they will submit." Humans are logical enough to recognize when they are beaten. The Zanari had used this method 17 times before. They would arrive at a primitive world with their beautiful fleet. The local species would see the advanced ships and realize they had no chance to fight. Surrender always followed. Sometimes the primitives even felt grateful to join the advanced Dominion. "What if they refused to surrender?" asked Velkara. Zexithara waved a hand dismissively. "Then we disable their crude ships and force them to listen to reason. Our energy weapons can shut down their primitive systems without killing anyone. Once they cannot move, they will have to negotiate." She walked to the large viewing window at the front of the bridge. Space stretched out endlessly before them. Somewhere ahead lay Earth and its billions of humans. Soon those humans would be part of the Zanari Dominion. They would learn to build proper technology. They would stop fighting each other and join the peaceful galaxy-spanning civilization. "Commander," called the navigation officer, "we are receiving more human transmissions from their system." "Put them on the speakers," Zexithara ordered. The bridge filled with human voices speaking in their simple languages. Music played with instruments made from organic materials. Humans talked about their daily lives, their families, their small concerns. They discussed the weather on their planet and what they would eat for their next meal. Zexithara listened and felt her confidence grow even more. These were not the voices of a species ready for war. These were the voices of simple beings living simple lives. They worried about trivial things. They had no idea that a powerful fleet was approaching their world. "They have no concept of galactic civilization," she told her crew. "Listen to them. They talk about problems in their own cities as if they were the most important things in the universe. They have never imagined that other species exist. The Zanari had encountered many species like this. Every primitive world was the same. The local beings thought they were alone in the universe. They focused on small local problems. They built crude technology and never imagined that advanced civilizations were watching them. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are also detecting their internet system. They share information through electrical networks." "Show me," Zexthera commanded. Images appeared on the main screen, human cities at night, glowing with electric lights, pictures of human families, videos of their primitive entertainment. Everything confirmed what the Zanari already knew. Humans were far behind the galactic standard of development, but something else caught Zexthara's attention. Mixed in with the peaceful images were other things. Movies about humans fighting wars in space, stories about humans battling alien invaders, books about human soldiers conquering other worlds. "They have active imaginations," Velkara observed. "Fiction," Zexthara said with certainty. "They dream about being powerful because they know they are weak. All primitive species do this. They create fantasy stories about being strong and conquering others." The Zanari had seen this pattern before. Weak species always created stories about being mighty warriors. It was a way for them to feel better about their limitations. The reality was always different. When faced with truly advanced technology, primitive species realized their fantasies were impossible. Zexthara looked at her fleet again. 200 ships, each one more advanced than anything humans could build. The smallest Zanari vessel carried more firepower than the largest human spacecraft. The Zanari had energy shields that could stop any primitive weapon. They had computers that could think faster than biological brains. They had medical technology that could heal any injury. Most importantly, they had experience. The Zanari had been exploring space for 1,000 years. They had built an empire spanning dozens of star systems. They knew how to handle primitive species with minimal violence. "Prepare the standard conquest protocols," Zexthara commanded. "We will offer them membership in the Dominion. We will explain the benefits of joining our civilization. We will show them what they can become if they accept our guidance." Her officers began working at their stations. The fleet would arrive at Earth in 3 days. They would take positions around the human homeworld. They would broadcast messages in human languages explaining the situation. The humans would have time to consider their options. If the humans were smart, they would surrender immediately. If they were stubborn, the Zanari would demonstrate their superior technology until the humans came to their senses. Either way, Earth would soon become the newest addition to the Zanari Dominion. Zexthara felt satisfied as she watched her beautiful ships moving through space. This would be another easy victory for her people. The humans would soon thank them for bringing advanced civilization to their backward world. Within a few years, Earth would be transformed into a proper Zanari colony. She had no way of knowing that she was making the biggest mistake in Zanari history. The Zanari fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Zexthara watched as her ships spread into attack formation around her flagship. 200 vessels moved with perfect precision, their silver hulls reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. "Long-range sensors are active," reported the sensor officer. "We are detecting multiple human installations throughout the system." Images appeared on the main screen. A space station orbited the red planet the humans called Mars. Several mining operations worked in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Most activity centered around Earth and its large moon. "How primitive," Velkara observed as she studied the readings. "Their largest space station houses fewer than 1,000 beings." Zexthara nodded in agreement. The human installations looked exactly like the intelligence reports had predicted. Simple metal structures held together with basic joints and welds. Solar panels and communication arrays stuck out at random angles. Everything appeared functional but crude. "They are already detecting us," the communications officer announced. "We are receiving multiple transmissions from various human facilities." "Are they surrender offers?" Zexthara asked hopefully. "No, Commander. They appear to be in greetings." Zexthara felt puzzled. "Greetings?" "Yes, sir. They are welcoming us to their system. They are asking about our intentions and offering to establish diplomatic contact." The human transmissions played over the bridge speakers. Voices speaking in the major human languages repeated the same basic message. They identified themselves as representatives of something called the United Earth Defense Alliance. They claimed to speak for all humans. They wanted to arrange meetings to discuss peaceful contact between their species. "They think we are here for diplomacy," Velkara said with obvious amusement. "Of course they do," Zexthara replied. "They cannot imagine any other reason for us to visit their system. They have no experience with galactic politics. She studied the tactical display showing human positions throughout the system. Their installations were scattered and poorly defended. Most appeared to be civilian facilities with no military purpose. The humans had built their space presence assuming they would never face a threat. "Commander," the sensor officer called out. "We are detecting a single human vessel approaching our position." A new contact appeared on the screen. It was tiny compared to the Zanari ships. The vessel looked like a simple metal cylinder with engines at one end and a communications array at the other. It moved slowly, broadcasting peaceful signals on multiple frequencies. "They are sending one ship to meet our entire fleet," Velkara observed. "Either they are incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." Zexathera watched the small human craft approach. It was probably some kind of diplomatic vessel. The humans were following their primitive protocols for first contact with alien species. They had no idea they were facing a conquest fleet. "Open communications with the human ship," she ordered. The main screen changed to show the inside of the human vessel. 3 humans sat at control stations. They looked exactly like the images in the intelligence reports. 2 arms, 2 legs, and heads covered with hair. They wore simple uniforms and appeared nervous but excited. The human in the center spoke in clear English. "Greetings to the visitors from beyond our solar system. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the diplomatic vessel UES Harmony. On behalf of all humanity, I welcome you to our system." Zexathara activated the translation system and spoke in return. "I am Fleet Commander Zexathara of the Zanari Dominion. We have come to inform your species of important changes." Captain Chen smiled, showing her white teeth. "We are honored by your visit. Humanity has long dreamed of meeting other intelligent species. We would like to invite representatives of your people to visit our space stations for formal negotiations." "Negotiations?" Zexathara felt confused. "You misunderstand the situation. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to inform you that Earth now falls under Dominion authority." The human captain's smile faded. "I don't understand. Are you claiming ownership of our system?" "Not claiming. Establishing," Zexathara corrected. "Your species will be integrated into the Dominion. You will receive the benefits of advanced technology and galactic citizenship. Resistance is not advised." Captain Chen looked at her companions, then back at the screen. Her voice became more formal. "Commander Zexathara, humanity appreciates your offer, but we must decline. Earth and all human territories remain under human sovereignty. However, we would be very interested in establishing trade relationships and cultural exchanges with your people." Zexathara felt her patience beginning to thin. The human was being polite, but she was also being stubborn. This sometimes happened with primitive species. They needed a demonstration of superior power before they would accept reality. "Captain Chen, you do not seem to understand. We are offering you the opportunity to join an advanced civilization peacefully. Your alternative is to be conquered by force. Which option do you prefer?" The human captain's expression hardened. "Commander, if you are threatening humanity, I must inform you that we will defend ourselves. We invite you to leave our system immediately." Velkara made an amused clicking sound. "She thinks they can defend themselves against us." Other Zanari officers began laughing quietly. The idea of humans defending against their advanced fleet was absurd. One Zanari ship could destroy every human installation in the system. Zexathara felt her annoyance growing. The human was being unreasonable. She was refusing a generous offer and making empty threats. This kind of primitive stubbornness always led to unnecessary suffering. "Captain Chen, I will give you one final opportunity to reconsider. Order all human military forces to stand down and prepare for integration into the Dominion." The human woman straightened in her chair. "My answer remains the same. We reject your demands. Humanity will remain free, that was enough." Zexathara had tried to be reasonable. She had offered the humans a peaceful solution. They had chosen to be difficult instead. Now they would learn why the Zanari Dominion always achieved its goals. "Velkara, target the human diplomatic vessel," she commanded. "Use minimum power. I want them disabled, not destroyed." "Yes, Commander." The weapons officer charged one of the fleet's smaller energy weapons. It was barely a fraction of their total firepower, designed for disabling primitive technology without causing casualties. Captain Chen seemed to realize what was happening. "Commander, please reconsider. There is no need for violence. We can find a peaceful solution to this situation." "You had your chance for peace," Zexathara replied. "Fire!" A beam of blue energy lanced across space from the Zanari flagship. It struck the small human vessel amidships, overloading its primitive electrical systems instantly. The ship went dark and began drifting helplessly. Human vessel disabled, the weapons officer reported. No casualties detected. Zexthera felt satisfied. The demonstration was complete. Now the humans would understand the reality of their situation. The loss of their diplomatic ship would convince them that resistance was futile. But something unexpected happened. Instead of surrender messages, the communications officer began receiving a flood of transmissions from throughout the human system. Commander, human facilities are broadcasting emergency alerts. They are calling this an act of war. Zexthera frowned. Act of war? We disabled one small ship. That was merely a demonstration. Sir, they are evacuating their civilian installations. Military units are taking defensive positions. Military units? Velkara asked with amusement. What military units? More contacts appeared on the tactical display. Small human ships began emerging from hidden positions throughout the system. Most were tiny patrol craft and cargo vessels pressed into emergency service. They grouped together near the major installations, their primitive weapons aimed toward the Zanari fleet. They really think they can fight us, the sensor officer observed with disbelief. Zexthera studied the human response with growing irritation. She had expected the humans to be shocked by their superior technology. Instead, they were mobilizing for battle. It made no sense. Any logical species would have surrendered after seeing the size of the Zanari fleet. Send a system-wide broadcast, she ordered. Inform all human forces that continued resistance will result in the destruction of their installations. They have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. But even as she gave the order, Zexthera felt a nagging doubt. The humans were reacting differently than other primitive species. Instead of panic and quick surrender, they seemed to be preparing for an actual war. She dismissed the feeling. Humans were just more stubborn than most primitives. Once they saw more demonstrations of Zanari power, they would come to their senses. She had no way of knowing that by disabling the diplomatic vessel, she had just activated protocols that had been waiting decades for this exact moment. The Zanari fleet moved deeper into the Sol system with confident precision. Zexthera watched as human installations continued their frantic evacuation procedures. Small civilian craft fled toward the outer planets while tiny military vessels took defensive positions around major facilities. The human response is more organized than expected, Velkara observed as she studied the tactical display. They have emergency protocols already in place. All primitive species have basic defense plans, Zexthera replied dismissively. It makes no difference. Their largest weapons could not damage our smallest ship. The communications officer looked up from his station. Commander, we are receiving hundreds of transmissions from Earth's surface. Their military forces are mobilizing globally. Let them mobilize, Zexthera said. Ground forces are irrelevant in space combat. We will deal with their planet after we control their orbital facilities. The main screen showed Earth growing larger as the fleet approached. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from this distance, but sensor readings revealed intense activity across its surface. Energy signatures indicated massive power plants coming online. Transportation networks carried military equipment to strategic locations. They're taking this seriously, the sensor officer noted. Power consumption on their planet has increased by 30% in the last hour. Zexthera felt slightly impressed despite herself. The humans were showing more coordination than most primitive species. Their response was still futile, but at least they were trying to be organized about their futile resistance. The fleet reached Earth's orbital space and began taking positions around the planet. Zanari ships spread out to control all major approach routes. Their formation was perfect, designed to prevent any human vessel from escaping or reinforcing their positions. All ships report ready for orbital assault, Velkara announced. Human space stations are within optimal firing range. Zexthera prepared to give the order to begin the final phase of conquest. The human orbital installations would be disabled first, eliminating their ability to coordinate resistance. Then the fleet would demonstrate its power by destroying selected military targets on the planet's surface. Faced with such overwhelming force, the humans would have no choice but to surrender. But before she could speak, the sensor officer called out in surprise. Commander, I am detecting a large object moving from behind. Earth's moon. Define large, Zexthera ordered. Mass readings are unusual. The object appears to be approximately 3 kilometers in length. Zexathera felt puzzled. A space station? Are they moving one of their installations to block our attack? Unknown, sir. The object is accelerating toward our position. Energy signatures are increasing rapidly. The main screen switched to show the far side of Earth's moon. At first, nothing was visible except gray lunar surface and black space. Then something began to emerge from behind the moon's curved horizon. It was enormous. The thing that came into view was unlike any human structure the Zenari had observed. Instead of the simple metal boxes and cylinders they expected, this was a massive dark shape that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. Its surface was covered in angular sections and protruding structures. Sensor analysis, Zexathera demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The object measures 3.2 kilometers in length and approximately 800 meters in width. Mass readings indicate extremely dense construction. Hull appears to be multiple layers of heavy armor plating. As more of the object became visible, its true nature became clear. This was not a space station or civilian facility. This was a warship. A huge, brutal, purposeful engine of destruction that made the elegant Zenari vessels look like toys in comparison. That is impossible, Velkara whispered. Our intelligence report said humans had no military spacecraft of significant size. The monstrous ship continued to round the moon, revealing more of its threatening profile. Massive gun turrets jutted from its armored hull like metal mountains. Launch tubes and missile silos covered its surface in organized rows. Energy weapon arrays glowed with building power. Every line and angle of its design screamed one message. This thing existed only to kill other ships. Commander, the communications officer said in a shaking voice, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it on screen. The image changed to show the bridge of the human warship. Unlike the cramped, simple interior of the diplomatic vessel they had destroyed, this bridge was vast and militaristic. Dozens of humans worked at weapon control stations. Officers in dark uniforms moved with practiced efficiency. Everything looked designed for one purpose, conducting war. At the center of it all stood a human male in his 50s. His uniform bore symbols that clearly indicated high military rank. His expression was cold and absolutely serious. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding others in battle. Attention, alien fleet. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earth Defense Force battleship Indomitable. You have committed an act of war against humanity by destroying our diplomatic vessel. I am authorized to respond with appropriate force. Zexathera tried to maintain her composure, but the sight of the massive human warship had shaken her badly. Admiral Kane, you cannot seriously intend to engage our entire fleet with a single ship. The human admiral's expression did not change. Your fleet has been analyzed and cataloged. Threat assessment is complete. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender, or I will demonstrate why humans don't build pretty ships. Don't build pretty ships? Velkara repeated in confusion. Admiral Kane continued speaking. You made the mistake of thinking we were weak because our civilian vessels look simple. You assumed we had no serious military capabilities because you only saw our peaceful installations. You were wrong. The Indomitable continued its approach and more details became visible on the sensors. The ship's armor was scarred and blackened in places, showing evidence of weapons testing and combat trials. Its hull bristled with so many different weapon systems that they could barely be counted. This was not an exploration vessel adapted for war. This was something built from the ground up to destroy other spacecraft. Your ships are beautiful, Admiral Kane acknowledged. They look fast and efficient. I'm sure they serve many purposes well. The Indomitable serves only one purpose, and it serves that purpose very, very effectively. Zexathera felt a chill run down her spine as she fully grasped what she was seeing. The humans had not built a space navy for exploration or colonization. They had built it for war. While the Zenari had created elegant multi-purpose vessels, the humans had designed pure weapons of destruction. Weapons analysis complete, her tactical officer reported in a voice barely above a whisper. The human vessel mounts approximately 400 individual weapon systems. Power readings suggest nuclear reactors designed for maximum output rather than efficiency. Armor thickness appears to be nearly 2 meters of composite materials. 2 meters of armor? Velkara asked in disbelief. Why would they need such heavy protection? The answer was obvious and terrifying. The humans had built their warship expecting to fight battles where everything would be trying to kill them. They had designed it to survive in combat environments that would destroy lesser vessels. Most horrifying of all, they had clearly tested it extensively. Admiral Kane looked directly into the camera. "You have 15 seconds remaining to surrender. I strongly advise you to take this opportunity. Once combat begins, I cannot guarantee your survival." Zexithara stared at the human battleship on her screen. Every instinct told her to retreat immediately, but the idea of fleeing from primitives was unthinkable. The Zanari Dominion had never been defeated. Her fleet outnumbered the human ship 200 to 1. "All ships target the human vessel," she commanded. "Concentrate fire on their largest weapon systems." Admiral Kane shook his head sadly. "Wrong choice." The transmission ended. For a moment, space was perfectly quiet. 200 beautiful Zanari ships faced one ugly human battleship across the darkness between worlds. Then the Indomitable opened fire, and Zexithara learned why pretty ships were not always the most dangerous ones. The first salvo from the Indomitable was unlike anything the Zanari had ever experienced. Instead of the precise energy beams they expected, massive metal projectiles screamed across space at impossible speeds. Each projectile was the size of a ground vehicle and moved at a significant fraction of light speed. The lead Zanari cruiser simply vanished. One moment it was there, a beautiful silver ship with flowing lines and elegant curves. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of superheated debris. The railgun projectile had punched through its energy shields as if they didn't exist, then continued through the ship's hull with devastating effect. "Impossible," Zexithara breathed as she watched her ship die on the main screen. "Their primitive kinetic weapons cannot penetrate our shields." But even as she spoke, more projectiles struck other vessels in her fleet. The Zanari ships had shields designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb moderate impacts. They had never been tested against solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The results were catastrophic. "Return fire," Zexithara commanded. "All weapons target their main hull." 200 Zanari ships turned their energy weapons toward the human battleship. Beams of coherent light and plasma struck the Indomitable's armored hull, creating brilliant flashes where they impacted. The energy weapons that could slice through asteroids and disable space stations struck the human vessel with full power. The Indomitable ignored them completely. "Report," Zexithara demanded from her tactical officer. "Our energy weapons are having minimal effect. The human vessel appears to have armor specifically designed to absorb and disperse directed energy attacks. Hull temperature is rising, but structural damage is negligible." More railgun projectiles lanced out from the human ship. Each shot was aimed with mechanical precision at a different Zanari vessel. The beautiful ships of the Dominion fleet died one after another, their elegant designs offering no protection against the brute force approach of human weaponry. "Evasive maneuvers," Zexithara ordered. "All ships scatter and attack from multiple angles." The Zanari fleet broke formation, their ships moving with graceful speed to surround the human battleship. They were faster and more maneuverable than the massive Indomitable. Surely they could use their superior agility to avoid its weapons while finding weak points in its armor. But the human ship had been designed by people who understood that enemies would try exactly this tactic. As the Zanari vessels spread out around it, secondary weapon systems came online. Smaller railguns tracked individual targets with computer-guided precision. Point defense systems engaged anything that came too close. Most terrifying of all, missile silos opened across the battleship's hull. "Incoming projectiles," the sensor officer reported with growing panic. "Multiple launch sources." Estimated count, over 300 missiles. Zexithara watched in horror as swarms of human missiles streaked toward her scattered fleet. These were not the simple chemical rockets she had seen in the intelligence reports. These missiles accelerated continuously, powered by some kind of compact nuclear engine. Worse still, sensor readings indicated that many carried nuclear warheads. "Nuclear weapons in space combat?" Velkara asked in disbelief. "That's insane. The radiation will affect their own ship." But the humans had obviously planned for this. The Indomitable's armor was not just thick. It was designed to provide radiation shielding. The human ship could fight in a nuclear battleground because it had been built specifically for that environment. The first missiles reached the Zanari formation. Those that struck directly caused massive damage, their nuclear warheads vaporizing entire sections of the targeted ships. But even the missiles that detonated nearby caused problems. The electromagnetic pulse from nuclear explosions disrupted Zanari computer systems and overloaded their sensitive electronics. Shields failing on multiple vessels, the communications officer reported. The electromagnetic interference is causing system failures across the fleet, Zexthara realized with growing horror that every aspect of the human warship was designed to exploit weaknesses she had never considered. Zanari technology was advanced and efficient, but it was also delicate. Their systems were optimized for clean energy and perfect conditions. Human weapons were crude but effective, designed to function in the chaotic environment of real combat. Analysis of human weapon systems, she demanded, from her science officer. The railgun projectiles achieve velocity through magnetic acceleration. Power requirements are enormous, but effectiveness against shielded targets is absolute. The missiles appear to use nuclear ramjet engines for sustained acceleration. Warhead yields range from conventional explosives to strategic nuclear weapons. How is their ship surviving the radiation from its own weapons? Hull analysis suggests multiple layers of radiation shielding integrated into the armor design. The human vessel appears capable of fighting extended battles in high radiation environments. More Zanari ships died as the battle continued. The elegant vessels that had conquered 17 star systems proved helpless against human military engineering. Their energy weapons could not penetrate the Indomitable's armor. Their shields could not stop the railgun projectiles. Their computer systems failed when exposed to nuclear electromagnetic pulses. Worst of all, the human battleship showed no signs of slowing down. Its massive nuclear reactors provided seemingly unlimited power. Its weapon systems fired continuously without overheating. Its armor absorbed tremendous damage without significant structural failure. "Commander," Belkara said quietly, "we need to retreat." Retreat? Zexthara could not believe what she was hearing. The Zanari Dominion has never retreated from battle. The Zanari Dominion has never faced anything like this, Belkara replied. Look at the tactical display. We have lost 60 ships in 10 minutes. At this rate, the entire fleet will be destroyed within an hour. Zexthara looked at her screens and felt sick. Her beautiful fleet was being systematically destroyed by a single human vessel. Ships that had taken years to build were dying in seconds. Crews that had served the Dominion faithfully for decades were being vaporized by primitive kinetic weapons. But the most disturbing realization was yet to come. As she watched the human battleship maneuver through the debris of her fallen ships, she began to understand the true horror of what they faced. Tactical assessment, she ordered. How many human vessels like this one could their industrial capacity support? The science officer worked at his console for several minutes before responding. Based on observed construction techniques and resource requirements, human industrial capacity could theoretically support multiple vessels of this class. However, construction time would be considerable given the complexity of the systems. How many do they already have? Unknown. This vessel emerged from concealment behind their moon. Others could be positioned throughout the system. The thought chilled Zexthara to her core. If the humans had built more ships like the Indomitable, if they had hidden them throughout their system, then her entire fleet might already be doomed. But even worse was the philosophical implication. Every other species the Zanari had encountered built ships for multiple purposes. Exploration, colonization, trade, and research were all more important than warfare. Combat capability was added as a secondary consideration. The humans had built the Indomitable for one purpose only: killing other ships. Every design decision had been made with that single goal in mind. They had accepted massive resource costs, huge construction timelines, and incredible complexity to create the most effective weapon possible. Belkara, Zexthara said quietly, I think we made a terrible mistake. What mistake, Commander? We assumed the humans were primitive because their civilian technology looked simple. We thought they were weak because they focused on basic survival needs. We never considered that they might have developed advanced technology specifically for war. Another group of Zanari ships exploded as nuclear warheads found their targets. The human battleship continued its methodical destruction of the Dominion fleet with mechanical precision. Send a message to all remaining ships, Zexthara ordered. General retreat. All vessels withdraw to safe distance immediately. But as her surviving ships began to flee, Zexthara realized that the real revelation was not about human technology. It was about human psychology. The Zanari built beautiful ships because they valued beauty. They created efficient systems because they prized elegance. The humans had built an ugly, brutal, massively over-engineered warship because they understood something the Zanari had never considered. In real war, only one thing mattered. Not beauty, not efficiency, not elegance, only winning. The surviving Zanari ships fled in disorder, their perfect formations broken by fear and desperation. Zexathara watched her fleet scatter as the human battleship continued its relentless pursuit. The Indomitable did not chase randomly. It selected targets with cold calculation, destroying the ships that posed the greatest threat first. "Damage report," Zexathara ordered, though she already knew the answer would be devastating. 87 ships destroyed, Velkara replied with a trembling voice. 34 more have significant damage. Casualty estimates are... She paused, unable to finish the sentence. "How many dead?" Zexathara asked quietly. "Over 40,000 Zanari personnel." 40,000. In less than 20 minutes of combat, the humans had killed more Zanari than had died in the previous century of conquest. The beautiful ships that were supposed to bring civilization to primitive worlds had become floating coffins. "Commander," the communications officer called out. "The human admiral is transmitting again." Admiral Kane appeared on the main screen. Behind him, his crew continued working at their stations with professional efficiency. They showed no excitement or bloodlust despite the destruction they had just caused. To them, this was simply their job. "Zanari Fleet Commander," Kane said in the same calm voice he had used before. "You have 30 seconds to order your remaining ships to power down and surrender before I resume firing." Zexathara felt the eyes of every surviving crew member in her fleet watching her. She had led them into a trap, based on her own arrogance and ignorance. Now she had to decide whether to save the lives that remained or preserve her pride. "Admiral Kane," she replied, "I wish to understand something before I respond to your ultimatum." "How did we miss this?" "Our intelligence gathering was extensive. We monitored your communications for decades. How did you hide such advanced military capability?" Kane's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested he was willing to explain. "Commander, your intelligence was accurate. Everything you observed about human civilian technology was correct. Our space stations are simple. Our commercial vessels are basic. Our cities are noisy and inefficient. Then how do you explain this?" Zexathara gestured toward the tactical display showing the massive battleship. "You made the same mistake that every aggressor makes," Kane explained. "You assumed that because our civilian technology was simple, our military technology must be equally primitive. You never considered that we might have separate development programs for different purposes." The human admiral moved to a display screen behind him that showed technical diagrams of various spacecraft. "This is a human cargo hauler," he said, pointing to a simple cylindrical vessel. "It's designed to move freight efficiently and cheaply. This is a research station," he continued, indicating a modular structure with scientific equipment. "It's built to support scientists studying space phenomena." The display changed to show the Indomitable. "This is a battleship. It's designed to destroy enemy warships. Each of these vessels was optimized for its specific purpose. We never tried to make our cargo haulers into warships, and we never tried to make our warships beautiful." Zexathara began to understand. "You deliberately separated civilian and military development." "Exactly. When your species achieved spaceflight, you built multi-purpose vessels that could explore, colonize, and fight when necessary. When humans achieved spaceflight, we built different ships for different jobs. Our civilian vessels are optimized for their civilian purposes. Our military vessels are optimized for war." The display showed more images of human military technology. Unlike the simple civilian spacecraft, these vessels were heavily armed and armored. They looked brutal and functional, designed by people who understood that in combat appearance meant nothing. "But why?" Zexathara asked. "Why would you separate these functions? Multi-purpose vessels are more efficient." Kane's expression became slightly sad. "Commander, I think you don't understand human history. We have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have fought with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with gunpowder and nuclear weapons. Every human knows that when someone wants to kill you, you don't survive by being efficient. You survive by being better at killing than they are." The truth of it hit Zexathara like a physical blow. The Zanari had never faced serious military opposition during their expansion. They had conquered primitive worlds through technological superiority and overwhelming force. They had never needed to develop pure military technology, because they had never faced enemies with comparable capabilities. Humans were different. They had evolved on a single world where multiple intelligent groups competed for resources. They had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare against opponents who were just as intelligent and creative as themselves. When they finally reached space, they brought that knowledge with them. The Indomitable represents 500 years of human military development, Kane continued. Every system was designed based on lessons learned in actual combat. Every weapon was tested against the most advanced defenses we could build. Every piece of armor was stressed beyond its theoretical limits. 500 years? Velkara whispered. But humans have only been in space for 50 years, Kane finished. But we have been planning for space combat much longer. We knew that eventually we would meet other species. We hoped they would be peaceful. We prepared for the possibility that they would not be. Zexthera looked at her tactical display again. Her remaining ships were outnumbered by just one human vessel, but that one vessel had been designed by a species that had never stopped preparing for war. The Zanari had built beautiful ships for a beautiful universe. The humans had built ugly ships for an ugly reality. Admiral Kane, she said finally, I surrender. All Zanari forces will power down their weapons and submit to your authority. Kane nodded gravely. Your surrender is accepted. All Zanari personnel will be treated according to the standards of interstellar law. Your wounded will receive medical care. Your dead will be returned to your people with full honors. Even in victory, the humans spoke of honor and proper treatment of enemies. They fought with overwhelming violence, but they also showed mercy to those who submitted. It was another lesson that Zexthara wished she had learned earlier. There is one more thing I need to tell you, Kane added. The Indomitable is not the only ship of its class. Humanity currently operates 7 battleships and 43 smaller warships. We also have extensive orbital defense installations and planetary weapon systems. 7 battleships. If one had destroyed most of her fleet, 7 could have eliminated every Zanari ship in the galaxy. The humans had not just prepared for war, they had prepared to win any war they might face. Why are you telling me this? Zexthara asked. Because I want you to carry a message back to your government, Kane replied. Humanity does not want to conquer other species. We are willing to engage in peaceful trade and cultural exchange with anyone who approaches us honorably. But if anyone else decides to test our military capabilities, they will discover that we have spent centuries perfecting the art of breaking things that attack us. The transmission ended, leaving Zexthara alone with her thoughts and the wreckage of her fleet. Around her, the surviving Zanari ships powered down their weapons and prepared for whatever would come next. As she began composing her report to the Dominion Council, Zexthara realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted permanently. The humans had entered galactic politics, and they had done so by demonstrating that their ugly ships were far more dangerous than anyone's beautiful ones. Her report would be brief. Mission failed. Human military capabilities exceed all estimates. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostile activities toward Sol System. The humans have learned to build ships that exist only to kill other ships. And they have learned to build them very, very well. She paused, then added one final line that would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. They do not build ships. They build weapons that happen to have life support. In the days that followed, word of the Battle of Sol spread throughout civilized space. Species that had considered expansion toward human territory quietly canceled their plans. Governments that had debated challenging human claims to nearby systems decided that diplomatic contact would be preferable. The humans, for their part, returned to their simple civilian pursuits. Their cargo haulers continued moving freight. Their research stations continued studying phenomena. Their diplomats reached out to establish peaceful relationships with their neighbors. But everyone in the galaxy now knew that behind the simple exterior, humanity had built something that no other species had ever created. A military force designed by people who truly understood that the universe could be a very dangerous place. And if anyone needed a reminder of this fact, they only had to look at the wreckage of the Zanari fleet drifting in Earth's orbital space, a monument to the folly of assuming that ugly ships could not be deadly ones.